Hi, I'm Kaula Azam, and I chose to do my presentation and end of semester essay on the indigenous tribe of Southern California, Los Angeles. Originally, they named themselves the Keys, but eventually became known as Tongva and Gabrielino. So, historically, Los Angeles is traced back to the first Pueblo, which became the official Los Angeles settlement in 1781. Um, an article I read by Lloyd explains that this pueblo did not arrive vacuum sealed and that the land it arrived on was not empty or barren. California was the home to thousands of families prior to the arrival of Spanish colonizers. Lloyd suggests nearly a population of 350,000 Indians across the whole state of California. The vast influences of Spanish colonizers once they arrived was only possible through the entrapment, forced labor, and enslavement of the Tongva people. Tongva tribal councilor member Mark Asunia explained how, in order to accomplish all this mission work, it was on the backs of Indians. There's no way other to talk about it. They built the 21 missions, um, and they worked the fields. And it's also important to acknowledge what he's trying to say, even though he tries to take a modest approach despite being also somewhat blunt. The Spanish colonizers' mission were built on pain and suffering and the constant and purposeful erasure of an entire culture and people. The Tongva people included all indigenous tribes native to both North and South America, who suffered many punishments, grieved many deaths, and still somehow do not exist in Western history, or are actually just not represented. And as we can see, there are many surrounding tribes. Tongva is close to the coast, but it's also sort of inland. We have another image displaying the various tribes. This one has Gabrielino titled, named. And then on this image, we have the old Spanish and Mexican ranches of Los Angeles, California. And this is over here, the San Gabriel um, mission and the Mission de San Fernando. There's many images of these two specifically within my presentation. And so, as I said earlier, the shift away from the name Quiche is because during the development of mission systems, the first one was supposedly washed away by probably El Nino flood conditions, and a new San Gabriel mission in 1774 was relocated. The Spanish eventually dropped the use of the term Quichonero and replaced it with Gabrielino when referring to the Indians of the area, explains tribal archaeologist E. Gary Stickle. Still, the local Quiche Indian people labeled themselves by associated villages they reside in, such as Topanga, Cahuenga, Tuhunga, and Cucamonga. And within these images, we see the forced labor and enslavement of Indians as they're building the Christian missionaries or Catholic missionaries. Um, this image does not depict at all the grotesque and brutality that was used to force these individuals into behaving as slaves. Um, but this is where we get to see the development of the missions. And on this side is the mission built. And over here, very small, subtly, you can see the keys or the hut that they usually lived in. So you can see the clash between cultures and the pushing away of the Indian styled homes. These are more images up close of the homes that the Tongva people had. Their homes were known as Tongva huts or ki. They used materials like tol and willow reeds. Architecturally, these builds were efficient for California earthquakes. Its design allowed a large amount of stability, powerful enough to withstand earthquakes native to California. Of course, the Native Americans were one with their own land and knew how to cater to her motions rather than suppress the natural ways of earth. So they lived here long enough to understand the way that their homeland reacted in its natural environment, and earthquakes have been normal in California for a long time, clearly for centuries, as the Native Americans knew about it already and had sophisticated enough architecture to withstand those earthquakes. So when people claim that um, they were, I don't know what the word would be, but they were basically behind or not as advanced as Western society, that is inaccurate, because they were able to be sufficient and architecturally advanced and use the land that they had in ways that Western society would not have understood, especially because I don't think that Western society knew California lands as well. Of course, they did not know the lands as well as California Indians, and so the houses and missionaries that they built were not built to withstand earthquakes. Here we have images of the Tiats, or also known as canoes. So the land of the Tongva people had plenty of natural food and resources to support the large group of people. Based on their location near the ocean, they practiced and mastered the art of canoe building. Canoes provided a huge advancement and purpose in their social system. Tias were used for fishing and for transportation to the islands that are known as Catalina and the Channel Islands, so that the Tongva could trade efficiently with their northwestern neighbors, such as the Chumash. The canoes or tiats were constructed of wooden planks sewn together with tar or pine pitch, and could hold as many as 12 people. So these were pretty large modes of transportation, modes of tools to hunt, to fish, um, and it allowed access to communicate with other tribes and nearby people. And the top left image is the restoration of an original canoe by Cal State Long Beach. And it was really cool to see in the article that we had a little celebration. I think we did it during one of the powwows at Cal State Long Beach, that they refurbished or basically just fixed and kind of made it useful and repainted it and made it beautiful again. So that was nice as a community and as paying respects to the land of Cal State Long Beach, because it is on sacred land known as Pavunga. For the food of the Tongva people, they're much like their neighbors. The Tongva people lived off the land, eating native wildlife and indigenous plants. Being an inland tribe, though, they relied more heavily on the land than the sea, even though they did fish and stuff like that within the rivers. Sometimes they baked bread from acorn flour or corn that they got in trade or made themselves. And they also tended to be somewhat nomadic depending on food scarcity and the weather and how large the tribe was. The Gabrielino had a really long list of foods and goodies, but on that list there was one thing that kept the Gabrielino waiting for the right time to collect. This was acorns. They ate tons of acorns each year, and almost ate about 500 pounds for a single family. So that was a lot of taking from the earth, but also reciprocity, as we learned. The Gabrielino ate lots of different varieties of foods too. They ate acorns, like we said. They also ate chia. These are the chia seeds. They're very popularized now. They are healthy, definitely. Then we have the sage. They drink and eat sage, but that's mostly used as a form of medicine and for sacred rituals. This over here is the yucca, and then berries, wild oat, and fish. We have the women crushing acorns over here using the baskets that we learned about in class. And just they use stones to grind up the corn and acorns. And they had many unique ways of getting food. The men hunted, women gathered, but that's not all. The most interesting thing is where they got all their food. Since they lived in the south coast, they went to the bay for fishing, but they also traveled to the mountains, traded, and traveled to forests to get their berries. So they didn't just expect everything to be near them. They worked hard for their sustainability and to sustain their community. Again, we have another not hut, not tiat, just their home, their keep. But there later on we will discuss the sacred sites of the Tongva people, but the sacred sites were contingent upon the revival of sacred and religious ceremonies native to the Tongva people. Historically, the Tongva's religious ceremonies took up a circular structure within the village. This is going to be this image right here. Ceremonies took up a circular structure. The buildings were called yuvar, and during celebrations, they would sometimes be adorned with flowers and beautiful painted suns and moons. And there were many ceremonies. So during funerary ceremonies, this circular structure acted as a barrier that allowed select males of status within the tribe's community to enter, and then only close relatives to enter. Also, who were allowed to enter were females who played a specific role, such as singing or dancing. Other ceremonies, other than the funerary one, celebrated gods. They celebrated births, they celebrated deaths, marriages, and many more major life events. Many more the major life events consisted of the puberty ceremony that we learned about. And during more tribal traditions, families would choose a husband for their 13-year-old daughter who was probably just completed their puberty ceremony. So they were a strong woman ready to be a mother and to have a family and be a partner. Besides the style of the location and who was allowed in and out, there was a medicine man whose role was to perform some specific songs and dances that were used in ceremonies and rituals. Singing and dancing required rhythms that often moved to the beats and motions of the 7 large oceans and to the thousands of church bells on Sunday as well. Singing and dancing in rituals serve many purposes. It's most often used in a way to create art and convey a message today. Tongva tribe member Eve Chavez performed Home of the Brave, where she discusses the repetitive nature of history. The repetitiveness she refers to is the genocidal tactics and white supremacist ideology of Western society. Tina Cauldron, a Tongva tribe leader or elder, discussed the history of her Tongva tribe at an event. She's saying, "When Earth is all used up, you can't just leave. You can't call my folks illegal if yours came across the sea." So she connects her ancestral and sacred knowledge to the destruction the Earth is enduring, caused by the disrespect and ignorance of pop culture. Native Americans are ignored despite their honesty and knowledge that they're willfully offering to the masses. And so we can see within these images the sense of community, the sense of respect, the sense of revival going on. So over here we have people singing and dancing, and so even if those songs and dances aren't the same as they were hundreds of years ago, they still have similar messages and new messages to be portrayed. Shamans and the medicine women or men that we were discussing. In addition, they were religious leaders and healers of a designated tribe. I think all tribes had shamans or medicine men. But once they were appointed, they had to be appointed.